Now we're going to welcome in Stewart Mandel, our commissioner of our Fox 4, the lord of all college football intelligence.
What does their current playoff landscape look like?
Rob, I'd give them 80% chance the Huskies win and they're in. The only reason I'm hedging a little bit...
That's not a lot of hedging. I mean, that's 80%. That's not a whole lot.
You know, after the election, we all have to be careful a little bit with our forecasts, but... I'm going to start by buttering you up. That 2005 USC team was a much better team than this Florida State team. This Florida State team has 16 sacks in 10 games. There are individual players out there that have more sacks than that. They're 77th in the country in rushing offense, behind Colorado. And as great as Jameis Winston is, he's the 22nd rated passer right now. Our guy Bo Wallace is 11th. So I think the reason Florida State's undefeated is simple. The teams they're playing aren't that good. The committee has, since they started doing the rankings on November 1st, Washington has always been at the back of their group. They were the last undefeated. Now they're the last of the one-loss teams, and it's because of that non-conference schedule. I think if they win this game over a top 10 team, they're a 12-1 Power 5 champion, they should be in. But the committee keeps talking about how close Washington and Michigan are. Michigan's not going to pass Washington without playing a game, but I guess they're leaving the door open, possibly, for the winner of that Big Ten championship game to get the final spot.
What's the timetable for this Big 12 expansion to narrow that list?
Yeah, well, right now, Rob, it's like watching The Bachelor for the Big 12. We're all waiting to see who will get the last rose. And I don't expect there to be any sort of resolution until the Big 12 presidents get together and meet in the middle of October. Now, there may be 11 schools that are being mentioned in reports. Realistically, I think you're looking at 3 schools competing for 2 spots. And those schools are Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU.
Other than UCLA, what was the biggest surprise in the bracket in your mind?
Seeing Dayton, the University of Dayton, pop up in one of the Dayton first 4 games.
Yeah.
And it's surprising for 2 reasons. For one thing, I didn't think Dayton was in that kind of trouble. When they released the true seed list, it turned out they were the very last team in. They would have gotten knocked out if UConn had won their championship game. So now they're playing on their home floor on Wednesday night against Boise State, who's got to travel so far to get there. How is that fair to Boise State? Couldn't we have maybe made UCLA play in the Dayton game?
Right.
And not had Boise State play what will actually be a rare, in fact, the only possible road game you can have in the NCAA tournament.
Do they fall into that characterization, Steve?
I believe so, because if you look at Ohio State's resume already, they beat that top 10 Oklahoma team on the road soundly. They beat Wisconsin on the road, who's in the top 10. Nebraska's ranked, they beat them 62-3, and they're already number 2 in the rankings, and then they're going to beat a top 5 Michigan team. Guys, if that's not unequivocal, I don't know what is.
And you're all right with them going, even though they may not make the Big Ten championship game? Not even win it, not even make it.
It's definitely a wrinkle that the committee hasn't had to deal with, because it could be, if Penn State wins the Big Ten, they would have a championship and a head-to-head win over Ohio State, but I still think Ohio State has the better resume. This weekend is a perfect example of, yet again, why the college football playoff has been such an upgrade from the BCS. In that system, the polls, the computers, they didn't really care who you played as long as you won the games. These schools that have scheduled these great matchups, they've gotten the message from the selection committee that who you schedule out of conference matters. The committee would rather reward a team, maybe slips up along the way, but at least challenged itself out of conference, over a team that just kind of schedules 4 cupcakes. Maybe they go undefeated, but maybe the committee would hold that against them. Texas AD Mike Perrin said on Friday, no consideration to an in-season firing. But there's no question he's coaching for his job the rest of this season. Expectations have changed a little from before the season, when we thought 8-4 would be enough to get him to next season. Part of it is what you guys have talked about with the defensive struggles. The other factor is the Tom Herman sweepstakes that are approaching here at the end of the season. LSU firing Miles so early, they got into the sweepstakes early. Everybody wants that Houston coach, and it's believed that he would probably take the Texas job if that were open, as well as the LSU job. UCLA had a lot of chances to play good teams. They only won 2 top 50 games. Colorado State, who didn't get in, they don't play as many of those type of games because of the conference they're in, but at least they went 500 in RPI top 100 games. I say reward a team like that finished a game out of first in the Mountain West.
LSU and Florida canceled for now. A lot of controversy around that decision.
If they don't make up this game, it could have messy consequences for the SEC race. And I'll give you an example. Let's say LSU wins the rest of its games here under Coach Orgeron, beats Alabama. The best they can get to is 6-1. If Alabama finishes 7-1, Alabama wins the division. If you're the SEC, you want to figure out a way to get this game played.
Stu, I want to ask you, if Colorado wins tonight, pulls off the upset, what are their chances of making the college football playoff?
It's tough because, Coach talked about not having comparative outcomes, and in this case, Colorado did play Michigan. Michigan sitting there ahead of them in the rankings. They beat them by 17 points. So if there are enough dominoes to fall that Colorado gets in the conversation, I don't see how the committee moves them above the Michigan team that they lost to in Ann Arbor.
But do those teams have a chance to sneak up here at the end?
That's where I think the Pac-12 definitely wants Michigan to win the Big Ten so that we're not even talking about a possible second Big Ten team. And in that case, yeah, it definitely opens the door for those other Pac-12 teams. Now, keep in mind, the committee, they have Colorado 10th, they have Utah in the high teens, but for whatever reason, they've got Washington State right now all the way down at 22, probably because of that FCS loss early in the season. So they've got a lot of ground to make up.
Fair question. Stewart Mandel always has the answers.